What is up, everyone? My name is Woody Thomas, and I'm the owner of Black Tie Barn Candle Company. This video is dedicated all entirely for you to add some value by showing you the type of candle supplies I use today. Okay, can't do it anymore. What's up, everyone? My name is Wade Thomas. I'm the owner of Black Tie Barn Candle Company. If this is your first time joining us, this channel is dedicated to adding value by providing information on candle making, candle businesses, and other stuff that might seem to fit in. So today's video is dedicated all towards candle supplies. So I've been asked about the type of tools, materials, and supplies that I use in my business, and also what supplies are good to get started candle making. Well, for me, I thought I'd merge both of those together. So this video is going to show you your bare necessities, the items and materials you probably should have to get started, so your basics and your fundamentals, as well as a lot of other things that you might find useful, tips, tools, tricks along the way to help you out with your candle making. You're going to see a lot of items here that I used when I first started. Many items I still use today. And I figured I would just show you a whole comprehensive selection of things that are helpful in candle making, especially if you're doing candle making at home and getting started. And then just leave it up to you to decide if it's helpful to you, and you can kind of cherry pick the items you think might be best for your situation. So with that in mind, let's get started. So first off, we're going to start with the obvious things. For example, wax. I'm not going to pull out the wax because honestly I have several types of different waxes. There are tons to choose from. I'll leave some of the common choices in general of waxes down in the description. To make a candle or a melt, you're going to need wax to get started. You're also going to need fragrance oil to add to your wax. They can come in 1 ounce samples. I don't really use 4 ounce samples, so I go up to 16 ounces. There are several to choose from. These are just to name a few. I will leave some of the popular candle fragrance companies in the description below. And you can also buy them in a little bit bigger volume, like your 5-pound jugs. You can also get them in larger amounts, up to pails. For many of you, you'll use the natural wax color. For others, you may also dye your wax. Now, you can use different types of dye. There are dye chips, dye blocks, and there are liquid dyes. There are also different kind of other pigments that you can add that are candle safe. Most people, including myself, do use the candle dyes, so that's the only one I'm really showing you today, but just know that there are other options. But what good is wax and oil and dye if you don't have anything to put it in? So obviously, you're going to need jars. And jars come in many different shapes and sizes. Additionally, if you're only making wax melts instead of candles, you might just use clamshell packaging. There are lots of different options out there for wax melt containers, but clamshells are kind of the most popular ones to get started. But if you're not making melts and you are making candles, can't have a candle if you don't have a candle wick. Now, wicks come in all different types, shapes, sizes, brands, wax coatings, lengths. Well, that probably covers it. Anyways, there are a lot of different wick options. I have an entire video that I'll leave in the description as well as a card above that talks all about wicks. In fact, that's the name of the title, is all about wicks. It goes into a lot of detail about why choosing the right type of wick is very important, but also some pointers of how to determine the right type of wick and how to use the information to make the best judgment call for yourself. Then I even provide some recommendations based off different wax types in that video. Either way, you need wicks. And if you're going to have wicks, you got to have a way to stick the wicks to the jars. Otherwise, they'll just fall over, make a very uneven burn pool. It will drown out the wick, and it can also be potentially dangerous. So make sure you have some wick stickers or some other type of adhesive. My choice is the wick stickers. Now, this next item is something that is optional specifically, but in general, you need a way to melt your wax. Now, you can use, starting out, the double boil method, and that is where you just simply take your melting pot or your pouring pitcher and add a little, and set it into a larger pot full of just a little bit of water. And as that water boils, your pitcher's inside, melts the wax slowly, you check the temperature, and you can use it that way. That is a very common way of starting out. But popular alternative method on the market, you can find them from some suppliers. There's people that sell them in Facebook groups for candle making, and you can also find them on Amazon. Again, I will link to one in the description. It is not the one that I purchased, but it does have good reviews, and I saw that they offer free returns if it doesn't work out for you. But what I'm referring to is the Presto Pop Maker with the spout on the front. This is what I'm talking about. Now, this is the larger size that you'll generally find. There's also a smaller one as well. This will allow you to hold more wax than the other one, but they're also going to be generally a little bit more expensive. But I would say that this is the size that most people go with. Again, details down in the description. The benefit of this is you can fill it up, it'll slowly melt, it's not going to harm your wax, and it's got the spout, making it a lot easier to just turn it off and on as you're filling up your pitcher. Next up, As you may have already figured out by now, everything about candle making is by weight, not by volume. That's your wax, that's your fragrance oil. Certain things like UV inhibitor can be done with just measurements of teaspoons, half teaspoons and such. But for the most part, you really have to weigh your materials, which means you need a scale. There are a ton of scale options out there. I would go with something that can get very specific and is very accurate down to multiple measurement types. And that can be ounces, grams, and pounds. And so, this is the one that I use right now. Now I use several of them. I have 3 of these ones, and then I have 2 other types of scales as well. What I like about this one is the bright blue screen. It's probably hard to see in the camera, but it's also very accurate. It's very quick and responsive on reads, and it lets you, again, thumb through the different unit types. It's also very economical. That being said, in the description, there are going to be 3 different scales I believe I'll mention in there. I've used them all, I like them all, and it just kind of depends on which one I'm using at the time, to be honest. But it is a very important item. You really can't live without it as a candle maker. By the way, these links that are down in the description are affiliate links. I figured if I'm going to take the time to make a YouTube video and take the time to go find all the links and put them in the description, they might as well be affiliate links. So just know that going into it. They are all economical items, and to be perfectly honest, you can find all of these items almost anywhere. Several of them you can find at local stores, but the good thing about Amazon, as most of you know, is you can find it all in one place, get it all delivered together, or a few shipments, and get them shipped free, most of the time. Now, the last item that I would consider a necessity to get started candle making is going to be your thermometer. Now, in my case, I use the laser thermometer. The reason I use this is it's very quick, it's accurate, and I just find it more convenient than the type that you actually adhere to the side of your pouring pot or got to hold it into the wax to get an accurate reading. Those are very accurate and they're great, and they actually measure the internal temperature of the wax in the center or wherever you have it, but they take longer to give you a reading. And what I've noticed with the infrared thermometers, and again, they come in various options. I will list 1 or 2 down in the descriptions. The reason I like the infrared thermometer is sometimes people are concerned that it's only measuring surface temperature, which is true. But when you're candle making, you're constantly stirring. So before I take a temperature, I'm just doing a little stirring, and then I aim it and take a quick read. It's accurate. I have never had a problem doing this. When I first started candle making, I used a traditional thermometer, and I was done with it in days. Never looked back after switching to one of these. So that wraps up what I would consider the basic requirements to get started candle making. That is your wax, your oil, your jars, your wicks, probably lids for your jars, your wick stickers or some way to adhere your wicks to the jars, as well as your scale, your thermometer. I think that about covers it. What about the other options? There are many optional items out there that can also prove very beneficial to candle makers. Now, I will go through these quickly as well. You can pick and choose which ones you think might be helpful. I will tell you that I've used all of these different tools, many of which I still use today, and they just tend to make the process easier. What's important is to find a workflow that works for you and find what you need. First on the list, latex gloves. I would highly suggest getting some gloves. They don't have to be latex, they don't have to be blue, but I would suggest gloves. The reason, if more than anything, is just to keep your hands clean, which also keeps your materials clean. And also, if you use dye, they are a lifesaver because, as anyone knows who uses liquid dyes, once it gets on your skin, good luck. You make more of a mess trying to clean it up. The benefit of the gloves is if you do get any on it and it's something you can't easily wipe off or get off with alcohol, you just dispose of the glove. And if you're careful, you can reuse the gloves multiple times. But I just find it really helps the process and keeps your hands cleaner. Plus, keeps your hands, oils, grimes, whatever, off of your jars and everything else as well. So, latex gloves. Speaking of keeping things a little bit cleaner, isopropyl alcohol. This will not only help you clean up little messes that you make along the way, especially things like the spilled dyes, but it's also going to help clean your pouring pots. And I probably should have mentioned that in the required items, so I'm going to go back to that. It's really hard to make candles without a pouring pot. Before I get to that, isopropyl alcohol. When you're done with your pouring pot, I would combine that with a sprayer. Fill up your spray bottle, make sure you label it alcohol so you don't think it's water. Water and candles doesn't mix. And whenever you need to clean something up or wipe out your pouring jars, I usually just use a paper towel or some other type of towel, clean out the obviously visible wax, and then I just spritz it down, let it sit for 30 seconds, wipe it down, good as new. So rubbing alcohol, lifesaver. Now to backtrack for a minute, it's really hard to make candles or pour candles without a pouring pot. I mentioned it, I forgot to show it. This is back on the required items, not optional. I guess technically it's optional, you could use something else, but most people use these for good reason. Stainless steels, It holds in heat well. It's got a comfortable handle. They last for a long time. They're easy to clean out. And this one holds 4 pounds of wax, and there's a smaller one that holds 2 pounds. So you definitely need a way to pour your candles. And again, as I was just showing, it's easy to clean out with paper towels and isopropyl alcohol. Also, because you have a pouring pot and you're going to be adding all your elements into the pouring pot, you do need a way to stir it as well. And when it comes to ways to stir, mix, or blend your wax and your oil together, which is very important, there are a lot of options out there. Most people start with something like a metal skewer or a wood skewer. I did that for a long time. Let me give you a little tip on thinner items like skewers or even whisks, something like that. It requires a lot of moving around to be able to mix it up, right? What happens is you have to move at a faster rate and you have to do it for longer, which causes more air bubbles. Air bubbles in wax, candle wax, do not mix very well either. So I went much more traditional, and it has been one of the best changes I made to simple candle making tools a long time ago. Now, many of you are probably already doing this or using a spatula or something like that, but I just went back to the good old fashioned plastic baking spoons, such as this. This. Spoon. Spoon. Plastic baking spoon. There we go. Okay, well, finally caught up. Next up, something to pour your fragrance oil. Now, the reason I consider this optional is because some people actually just set their pouring pot on the scale, zero it out, and add their oil. I find that a little risky. I'm not the only one that has added too much at one time and wish you could have got it back out. So I don't recommend that method. Now, you don't have to use a plastic cup, but if you're in a bind, you can use something like a plastic paper cup very quickly. You don't want to let the oil sit in this too long. If you're going to use something like this, work fairly quickly. And then dispose of it. More common and popular option is just to use a glass measuring bowl or cup. Now, the benefit of this is once you're done, first of all, it's just completely reusable, right? But also, it is sturdy, it's solid, it's not going to tip over as you're pouring your oil into it. You just set it on your scale, tear it out, add your oil, pour it into your candle wax, wipe it out, maybe spritz it with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol again, and wipe that out, and ready for reuse. Measuring spoon. You might be thinking, what would I need measuring spoons for? I've only got wax, oil, dye. What would these be used for? Well, another optional items that you might use this for, UV inhibitor. Now, many people don't start with this, but I would recommend that if you start getting into higher level or volume sales, especially if you get in any kind of wholesale account or something where your candles are just sitting on shelves for extended period of times, you can't control the type of lighting that is in those stores or on those shelves, nor can you control where they put it in those shelves or in their store. For example, if it's next to windows, that UV light is really going to start fading your candles over time. Certain colors, certain oils will fade faster than others or discolor faster than others. One way to combat that is the use of UV inhibitor. You're going to find several different recommendations on how much to use, but for the most part, most people recommend using anywhere from a 1/4 teaspoon to a 1/2 teaspoon per pound. Now, it's not going to completely eliminate UV fading or discoloration, but it will drastically slow it down and it will drastically reduce the significance of the fading. So you can do this not by weight, but you can just use a teaspoon for that. So I would get a set so you can measure a 1/4 teaspoon if you need to, 1/2 teaspoon, or go up from there if you're making larger batches. I've mentioned it several times, but it wasn't included in my required or basic items, and that is paper towels. Now, you don't have to use paper towels, especially if you're trying to limit the use of paper towels, but otherwise, come in handy. You're going to use them a lot. Candle making can be a very messy project, but honestly, this could have went in the necessity item. It's really hard to go batch to batch without wiping down your materials and wiping down your containers or your pouring pots or your surface area or your hands. Now, I've also mentioned a few times already as well that you're going to weigh everything. But how do you know how much to weigh or how much you should be weighing? How much do you add to your wax? You might know the calculations, but sometimes that can be difficult to do in your head. Make sure you have a calculator. Doesn't need to be fancy. Doesn't need to be some kind of T9, whatever you call them, but you can get something basic. Make sure you have one. Now, as you start doing this for a longer period of time, you're going to develop your recipes. You're going to have them documented somewhere most likely. But if you're just getting started and you need to figure something out on the fly, or particularly for testing and you're just making something quickly, calculators are lifesavers. Okay, so the very first item I started this video with was a big tub of wax. By the way, you may have asked why I have that in a tub. Obviously, in my case, my wax doesn't arrive in a tub. It arrives the same way yours does. Bags, boxes, or pallets. But when I get those, I typically break those down and put them into sealed tubs. I think I can temperature control them a little better, protect from humidity, as well as I label the boxes with the type of wax I use and the lot number on that wax. The reason I do that, just a little tip, is if you find out you have an issue with a particular candle and you can trace it back to the wax, then you're able to look up all the candles you made with that batch or lot of wax. Doesn't happen a lot, but it takes an extra few seconds to do that, so why not? You never know if you might need it. Anyways, back to the wax. Why did I bring it up? Because when a box of wax arrives, you can't very well just drop an entire 60-pound box of wax into your pouring pot or into your melter. So you need a way to cut it up. Some wax comes in pellets, some comes in flakes. Those are easy, you can scoop them out and use whatever you want. Most wax come in slabs. Some are softer than others, some can get very, very hard where you might need a chisel and a hammer. But at the very least, you probably need something like a knife. This will help you cut up your wax into more manageable size pieces and chunks, put them in your melter. You might get really creative and get something like this. You don't have to. What could I possibly need a paper plate for? One tip I found out a long time ago, especially for those of you that are using dye and color in your wax, is sometimes you need to know what that color is going to look like before you make an entire batch of candles out of it. It's not going to be exactly what it looks like when it comes finished in the jar, but whenever you add in color and you want to know, should I add a little more color, should I add a different color, what does this give me an idea of what this looks like? Well, as you've added your wax, stir it around, mix it in, and just put a couple drops right on a paper plate. It's going to dry very quickly. You can get a pretty good idea of at least the hue of what the color might be. The saturation could vary a little bit, especially depending on your wax, but you can get a pretty good idea of what that color is going to turn out to be, and then you can adjust on the fly before you make your entire batch of candles. Then once you know that candle going forward, you document it, and you won't need the paper plate for that particular recipe for candles anymore. Now you know exactly I need 4 drops of magenta, 2 of red, 1 of orange to get your peach color. By the way, I don't know if that's peach color. I just made that up. Okay, what on earth could these be? Most of you are going to recognize these right off the bat, but many of you brand new to candle making might not. The one here on the right, left, I'm not sure how this is going to look like in the finished video. This one with a single is made for your jars that need single wicked. It's got ribs of different widths, starting from the bottom up to the top, so it fits various different jars. You can insert your wick and plunge the wick down into your jar to help keep it centered. Really handy tool. I will say it doesn't fit all jars exactly right. Found that putting Velcro strips around the rib, the different ribs there, that you can actually make a pretty good snug fit into almost every jar. So a little tip there. If you need more clarification on how that works, just let me know in the comments. This one, on the other hand, is for your, you guessed it, double wicked. So this is for your larger jars, and I would say this goes up to a good 3 to 4 inch style jar. It can handle double wick, and actually it can handle triple wicks as well. There is more holes to do a triple wick, and it works the exact same way as the other one, and you can space the plungers apart different widths as they provide several holes to allow you to accommodate different size jars. So I don't know that these are necessities. A lot of people don't use these or don't start with them, but if you find it could be helpful to you, I will try to find them and link them in the description. Next up, protective eyewear. Wax can splash up a little bit if you're getting too close. You just don't want this stuff getting in your eyes. I'll be honest, I am pretty guilty of forgetting this quite often. I would suggest, if you can, to do it. It's just all about safety, right? This, on the other hand, might be a little extreme. I don't know that you need this, but if you find it might help or make you feel better, go for it. Just in case you didn't hear that, I was saying that this could be a little more on the extreme side. I will say 99% of candle makers, even professional ones, are not wearing something like this, especially if you're in a fairly open, ventilated area. It's just the aroma can really start giving you headaches and migraines if you're around it too much, or you're using certain oils that are very, very potent. So, all joking aside, these are very good, and they can really do a lot of good for you if you want to do it. Just an option. Another item that no one really thinks about that can be really useful in candle making, whether you're making candles or melts, is your pipette. And I will link these in the description as well. And what these are really beneficial for is if you accidentally overfill one candle, leaving another short, or you do the same thing with a wax melt. I keep 500 of these on hand at all times, and they're really affordable. And you can actually just suck some of the wax out of one jar and fill in the difference in the other jar. It's just used to make little minor adjustments if you really are perfectionist like I am, or OCD about fill levels. So I would really highly recommend something like this. I don't know many people that are using it. I love them. So Again, they'll be in the description. One other thing, I don't have a picture of it, but it'll be in the description. So when you click on the link, you'll see a picture of it. But many people ask me what I use to take product photographies. Now, if you're doing live shots, scenic shots, situational shots, you might put those, you might do it outside, you might do it against a backdrop, whatever. There's a lot of way to take product photos. There's also a affordable, cheap way to do something consistent if you're looking for a consistent, solid colored background. And that is like a small product photography photo light kit. So I will link that in the description. I think mine was around 30 or 40 bucks. It's just 4 walls or 3 walls with a base or with a floor. And mine even came with a couple little lights, and you can adjust to get the right kind of look you're looking for. You take the picture in camera and then you edit it in something like Photoshop. So I'll link that in the description below. And if anyone has any questions about how to use something like that, it's really easy to look just on YouTube, other videos about how to use something like that, but I'm more than willing to help as well. Okay, I know a lot of people have been wondering, what about a heat gun? Well, I was saving it for last on purpose because I wanted to mention a couple tips on the heat gun. First of all, I will link a couple different options, or at least one option down in the description. My suggestion on the heat gun is to be very careful. You see people talking about, oh, you just need one with one temperature setting. I'd be careful with that unless it's a low temperature setting. I also see some people suggest that you want some with multiple heat settings. Again, if you're gonna use that to go up to the higher settings, I wouldn't recommend that. You're just gonna scorch your wax, burn off your oil, ruin the top of the wax, or make an ugly burnt appearance on your wick. So be very careful with heat guns. I would use the lower setting, and I would not ever turn it on the full power as far as the velocity of the air, because you don't want to splash it out of the jar. So I'd use a low heat, low fan speed, and just keep it above the top of your wax. Why, for you brand new candle makers out there, why would you need something like this? Well, many waxes kind of have a settling effect after you pour a candle once it hardens, and it's not always a very aesthetically appealing look, particularly with soy waxes. Soy waxes can crystallize or do some frosting or get ugly cratered tops, and this can help kind of, just smooth that out a little bit by applying a little heat, remelting the top, just a very thin layer, and when it cools, it would generally look a little bit better. Paraffin wax, on the other hand, doesn't look aesthetically bad, but it does tend to shrink more. Just because of the nature of paraffin wax. So because it shrinks, you have two options. You can do a second pour of wax, or you can pour enough the first time, or almost enough, and then you can melt the top layer and it will fill in the holes. Sometimes if it's a larger jar, you're still going to have to do a second pour. The moral of the story is a heat gun is a multi-purpose tool, and if you use it correctly, it can really be beneficial. Also, as a disclaimer, if you're going to have something like this in your candle area, I would make sure that if you do have kids or animals, if the heat gun you have has the capacity to do a cool off session, once you turn it off, it will turn on cool air to cool off the metal part on the outside. I would recommend doing that, and then I would unplug it, turn it off, hang it up, get it out of hand's reach, because that gets so hot it will cause massive injuries. Next up, wick trimmers. Now, very optional item. You can use scissors, you can use snips, you can use wire cutters, you can use toenail clippers. I like wick trimmers, but not all wick trimmers. So I'm going to leave the one in the description that I really like. This particular type of wick trimmer is awesome, and the reason is because it has this beveled bottom and beveled edge that is approximately 1/4 inch thick, which is the recommended length to cut your wicks to or trim your wicks before you burn or sell a candle. So what I like about this is you just sit it straight down on the wax, the wick goes in the middle, you snip, and it cuts it to 1/4 inch. I love these. These are the only wick trimmers I buy and use at all anymore. It just makes your entire workflow very, very consistent. So I will link these in the description, and hopefully you enjoy them as much as I do. Last but not least, your lighter. What's the fun in making candles if you don't ever get to enjoy your own work? So purchase yourself a nice little set of lighters. I prefer these longer style kind of grill lighters, just it's easier to get out of the jars. They're just easiest to use, right? I will use matchsticks sometimes. I just kind of like that rustic feel of using a match. It's just, I don't know, it makes you feel kind of cool. Anyways, what I don't like using are regular lighters. So I would get matchsticks or something like this. Well, I think that about wraps up a good look at a bunch of different tools, items, materials. Hopefully you found this video helpful. And again, there are those links down in the description. If you have any questions about any of these items, please leave them in the comments. If you have any suggestions on a few other items that I just completely forgot about, feel free to put it in the comments. There was a lot of items here. I'm sure I missed something. Again, I just kind of wanted to go over what I consider basics requirements as well as helpful tools that sometimes you just might not think about. Oh my God, I forgot one thing. 1 second. You got to get yourself a cool apron. You're not a candle maker if you don't wear an apron. Not only does it keep you clean, it keeps you in style. Anyways, I'm just kidding. No, but I'm not. I would get an apron. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful at all, entertaining, informative, whatever, please feel free to hit the little like button. I also have a lot of other videos coming down. I already have some posted, but I have a lot of other videos coming down the road, so feel free to subscribe and hit the little bell notification so you know when I upload a new video. And again, if you guys have any questions, comments, feedbacks, reach out, leave a comment, and I'll do whatever I can to help. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.